As I look out over the political landscape now, I find plenty of slogans on the Republican side and not very many ideas. And indeed, if you raise specific ideas and solutions, as I tried to do on health care with Ron Wyden, you are attacked with the same vigor as we've seen in American politics all the way back to the arguments over slavery and polygamy. You are attacked as being a wimp, insufficiently pure, and unreliable.
And that was soon-to-be former Republican Senator Bob Bennett of Utah, an incumbent Republican pushed out this year in the fantastic, crazy heat of what's going on right now in our country in conservative politics. Joining us now for the interview is New York Times columnist Frank Rich. Mr. Rich, nice to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you, Rachel.
So, what we saw there, the reason I wanted to play that Bob Bennett clip is because I feel like that's something we really rarely see, elected Republicans actually doling out some friendly fire. How do you think the Republican Party is doing overall in its sort of post-Bush, post-McCain era?
Well, I think it's struggling, not necessarily politically, but for a message. What's it about? On one hand, they have this sort of reversion to this extreme fiscal conservatism of tearing down the safety net, no unemployment benefits extension, against regulation, apologizing, for heaven's sakes, not just to a abusive company like BP, but a British one, which is just seems totally tone deaf. They have the social issue component that's sort of off on the side and feeling disgruntled. They have a race problem. I don't know what the message is except the party of no, and while it's sort of a cliche, there's something sort of nihilistic about it. They don't want to... What policies are they proposing or supporting unless maybe General Petraeus is involved? That's about the only the only thing they can rally behind.
Unanimous. Everything unanimous for Petraeus. It's true. We just have had word since we've been on the air tonight from the AP. For the third time in as many weeks, Republicans in the Senate have successfully filibustered a bill to continue providing unemployment checks to millions of people. Republicans obviously keep blocking unemployment extensions as we've got this record unemployment. But there is this issue of Republicans trying to make unemployment benefits themselves seem like a bad thing. People like Sharon Engel, Jim DeMint, not only voting to not extend it or saying they would vote to not extend it, but trying to argue against it, arguing that unemployed people are lazy and spoiled. How significant is that?
Well, I think it's just, I don't know how significant it is beyond sort of the really far right-wing fringe, and we're talking about really the far right of that party in terms of office holders and candidates. But it is significant, and it's returned to sort of the classic kind of John Birch Society republicanism of just, you know, almost pure Ayn Rand. No government, no regulation. Let business do what it wants. Let people fend for themselves. It's if you want to rewrite all of history since the New Deal, which is what they want to do. They are supporting Medicare because they realize they don't want to lose the votes of senior citizens who like Medicare. So they're suddenly positioning themselves as defenders of that during the health care bill.
Although the Paul Ryan blueprint among House Republicans calls for getting rid of Medicare.
Right, and some of the recent primary winners talk, including, I think, Engel, talk about downsizing or privatizing or phasing out Medicare and Social Security.
Yeah, the guy who ousted Bennett in Utah, exactly.
Yeah, and so which is sort of Tea Partyism, whatever the size of the Tea Party itself. And I think there's a vacuum. So all this sort of somewhat nutty stuff can rise to the top because who's the leader of that party?
Right.
There is no leader.
But is there room, if the Republicans really embrace that, and I mean, even if it is only the DeMints and Sharon Engels of the world who are saying, you know, unemployed people are spoiled and lazy and bad people, and that's why they're unemployed, right. But all Republicans are voting to filibuster unemployment benefits. Doesn't that open up some political room for Democrats to say, hey, look at the Republicans. This isn't a referendum on us. It is a choice in this election. It's us or it's the kick them when they're down, we hate you for being unemployed party. Will Democrats do that?
Well, I think Democrats, as you've shown, have been trying to do it. I think there are two problems. One is Obama's the best person to do it, but it's not really kind of in his wheelhouse to be Harry Truman and do this a lot. And the people bearing the administration's economic message, Larry Summers and Timothy Geithner, I don't think they can send them out to sort of send this message. They're just not going to be credible at it as performers. Then you've got the other problem, which is working in the Republicans' favor, which is unemployment itself. Even if this economy was inherited, and it was from the Bush years, the fact is, if those unemployment numbers don't move, that drowns out the political message, sadly, and understandably, but sadly.
Let me ask you also about Afghanistan. Afghanistan obviously thrust back into the headlines because of the McChrystal scandal. But is Afghanistan likely to remain what I think it still is right now, which is essentially a policy issue? Or could it become a politics issue? Could it be a sleeper issue in this election?
I think it'll be a sleeper issue only if it erupts. I think otherwise it will be kind of, as McChrystal said, a bleeding ulcer, sort of low-level fever. But if things go south badly and the status quo doesn't hold, then it could be a political issue. Otherwise, I don't think it'll be a political issue till December, after the election, when the administration has already announced they're going to have a reevaluation of the policy.
Briefly, one last question. The Michael Hastings Rolling Stone interview, do you think that it ends up becoming a journalism story even more than it is a war story because of the implicit critique it represents about journalists who wouldn't have published those comments if they had heard them?
Yeah, I think it's embarrassing. I think, he was interviewing the McChrystal and company when everyone in Washington was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, getting ready for the prom. Yeah. I think there's something off about the press corps. And also, I don't like the way that a lot of them trashed him, as if he was doing something out of line. There was nothing unorthodox about that story. And for heaven's sakes, much of it was on the record.
Yeah. Frank Rich, New York Times columnist, and somebody who I always really, really enjoy talking to. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.